Released by Square Enix in 2009 on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, director Motomo Toriyama, who directed Final Fantasy X-2, and writer Daisuke Watanabe from Final Fantasy X, X-2, XII, and the Kingdom Hearts series, returned to create the first installment in the main Fabula Novola Crystallis trilogy. Like Final Fantasy X, design emphasis was on a more story-focused cinematic experience, and as such, the game paces itself to start along a very linear progression with limited character customization to establish characters, story, and mechanics, then shifts gears to a non-linear open environment setting with player-determined development and optional side quests. Like some previous Final Fantasies, the cast of characters have preset progression of abilities and natural strengths, though players can set the pace of individual class growth to fill roles in battle. The battle system has been significantly changed to focus on faster-paced active strategy rather than the traditional micromanaged turn-based combat, and to complement it, feature many dynamic monsters that change form or vulnerabilities mid-battle, against which the player must also dynamically change roles and abilities, called paradigms. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. Set in the world of Grand Pulse, the game begins with a train of quarantined citizens being shipped off in a relocation process known as the Purge. Stowed away on the train for the purpose of rescuing their missing family is Lightning, a former soldier looking for her sister, and Zsasz, a pilot looking for his son. Meanwhile, battle rages on in the streets, where the military is suppressing an armed resistance group by the name of Nora, whom also opposes the Purge eviction efforts, calling it out as civilian execution. Navigating the tight corridors of the appropriately named megacity of Cocoon, Zsasz tags along with Lightning as they make their way to the ffxiii currently in transit. ffxiii are the huge godlike entities that support the functionality of the entire world, and as such, there are a number of them. The ffxiii can forcibly recruit anyone into working under them as a thrall, and those branded by the ffxiii as their servants are called lassi. At the same time, the leader of the Nora resistance, a brash man named Snow, who's also looking for his missing fiancée, rescues another batch of civilians about to be purged. Many in the group volunteer to help fight, including the mother of a boy named Hope. Hope himself shies away from the burden of protecting those wanting to stay behind and escape, though a girl named Vanille steps up to help. However, as the resistance is suddenly overwhelmed by a push from the military, Hope's mother is killed in action despite the efforts of Snow to rescue her, as she tells him to protect her son. Hope witnesses this as Vanille leads him away amid the chaos. At the same time, Lightning and Zsasz discuss how the Purge really is just mass execution disguised as benign exile, and how ffxiii from the distant wildlands of Pulse and their lassi servants are being branded as enemies of the state by the government, called Sanctum. On cue, the captured Pulse ffxiii is being escorted out of the city and happens to be the target for Lightning and Zsasz, Snow, and Vanille. As Hope sees Snow move on, he becomes driven to chase him and get an answer out of him as to why he lived, but his mom died. As they enter the vestige for the ffxiii, Vanille finds a rod stashed away before an enemy attacks them, prompting Hope to fight with his boomerang in defense. Deeper inside, they are surrounded by monstrosities named Seath, and Vanille explains that the godlike ffxiii brand people and turn them into servant lassi with a specific mission to fulfill along with a deadline. If the lassi minion either refuses to complete the task or fail to complete it in time, they are punished and turned into monstrous Seath abominations. Suddenly, Snow comes in to help protect them, and afterwards he reveals his fiancée Sarah has been turned into a Pulse lassi, but he still wants to save her. Hope is then enraged at the thought that Snow cares more about saving a lassi, branded an enemy of the state, than the deaths of the resistance members so far, particularly his mother. He reveals that he and his mother were only on vacation in the village of Bodum where the Pulse ffxiii appeared, and despite being perfectly normal, were scooped up by the military to be executed. And, despite how his mom died anyway, it was apparently to save a guy who was concerned with saving the one person the whole army is killing everyone to get to in the first place. Vanille tries to get Hope to talk things out rather than bottle up his frustration, but Hope is too angry right now, though follows along anyway. At the same time, Lightning and Zsasz are in another part of the Pulse ffxiii. Zsasz reveals he knows about the lassi life cycle after Lightning reveals she is looking for her sister Sarah. He explains that lassi can never be changed back to human, and even if they complete their assigned mission, called a focus, then they stay a slave of the ffxiii regardless. Still, she isn't going to give up that easily, and further in they actually find Sarah. Lightning scoops her up and prepares to leave, though Zsasz halts her, points out the brand on her, and questions that perhaps they should just put her out of her misery now, as if they cannot help her complete her focus, she'll just turn into a monster to be killed anyway. Or if they do, she'll instead stay a slave forever. Snow comes in and rushes to her side, and Sarah tells them both that they need to save Cocoon. As this action seems to suggest it was apparently her focus, Sarah succeeds in her mission and is turned into a crystal, rewarded with some version of eternal life, and leaves a crystal tear for Snow. Snow insists Sarah is still alive in this form, but Lightning is too stricken with grief of loss to accept that. Meanwhile, the army proceeds to dispose of the vestige, and Snow moves deeper inside to confront the actual ffxiii within directly to obtain a means to restore Sarah, and Lightning actually supports this. However, they're all suddenly seized by the ffxiii, which has the form of a giant crystal, further taking its true shape as the ffxiii named Anima. Instantly, they are branded as l'Cie minions to this Pulse ffxiii, and Anima chooses to impart its focus by means of a vague vision. Dying now, Anima drops into a lake below and turns everything around it into crystal as part of its death throw. Waking up in the now crystallized Lake Brescia, they are attacked by Seath that also tumbled out with them, and Snow discovers he has incredible new strength and magic, all parts of their brands as l'Cie. However, Hope can't cope with what he calls a curse, and blames Snow for again dragging him into a miserable state. They discover they all share the same vision of some beast named Ragnarok, and Snow surmises that given how Sarah got her focus from the same ffxiii, and she succeeded by telling him to save Cocoon, then their focus must be to do so by defeating Ragnarok. Zsasz doesn't buy that, given how Cocoon considers Pulse an enemy, and on cue, the anti-Pulse elite division of the military, PSICOM, comes to take them, but the group effortlessly defeats them with their enhanced powers. Now fugitives with nowhere to go but forward, they cross across the wreckage of the vestige and come across Sarah's crystal form. Lightning is ready to move on, but Snow refuses, and after another attack, Snow elects to stay behind as the others move on to seek their focus. Beyond, they see PSICOM sweeping the area and understand the government, called Sanctum, which is being guided by Cocoon's own ffxiii, named Eden, are both okay with the extreme prejudice and fear Cocoon's citizens have against Pulse. Slipping by and finding an air transport, they are unaware of a strange owl watching over them. Back with Snow, PSICOM forces catch him and are about to kill him when suddenly a pair of icy creatures come out of his brand and defeat the entire force. Proving his worth to command such power, Snow unlocks the aid of the motorcycle transforming Eidolon, Shiva. After the battle, he's picked up by another l'Cie named Fang and a special unit that also collects Sarah. Meanwhile, after shaking off an air patrol and fleeing Cocoon by air, they catch media propaganda being spread by Sanctum's leader, Primarch Daisley. They catch a glimpse of the Cocoon ffxiii the Sanctum uses, but are soon shot down and separated as they crash into the Deadlands of Cocoon, the Vile Peaks. As Hope and Lightning press on, she explains a two-way split of the military into the anti-Pulse force, called PSICOM, and the security-minded Guardian Corps, which she formerly belonged to. Vanille and Zsasz catch up, and they find relics of the old war of aggression hundreds of years ago, when Pulse and Cocoon were fighting, from which the Vile Peaks is just a scrapyard of wreckage pulled from Pulse, including the sleeping ffxiii, Anima. Lightning rejects taking orders from the ffxiii and openly states that if Cocoon's ffxiii Eden wants them dead, then she'll take the fight to it and win, even if that means taking Cocoon down with it. Hope chooses to tag along with her, though Vanille and Zsasz are unsure and think it best to keep running for now. Splitting off, Lightning says she plans to reach Eden through Palampolum, which happens to be Hope's hometown, and he offers to guide her through. He finds an intact Pulse mech and pilots it for a time to clear a path for them through the PSICOM-riddled mountain. Further along, Hope struggles to match Lightning's marching pace, and she opts to just leave behind as well. Suddenly, her brand flares up and she must defend against her Eidolon, Odin. Realizing the error of trying to do everything on her own, she apologizes to Hope and gains Odin and his Warhorse transformation. Cutting over to Snow, he is taken to the airship Lindblum, where Brigadier General Sid meets him and informs him he is to be publicly executed to put down public fears. Back with Lightning and Hope, Hope is quickly toughening up thanks to Lightning as a training partner, as they pass through the Gapra Whitewood en route to Palampolum. As this is also a military facility meant to create bioweapons, she loans him her knife to keep him safe, and as it's the same knife Sarah gave her as a birthday present, it's also a sign of trust towards Hope. He reveals his growing conviction to kill Snow as revenge for all the problems he caused, and Lightning reminds him it was Sanctum that killed his mother, not Snow. As they exit and Hope's town is in the distance, Lightning insists it's the right thing to do to let his father know what happened to him and his mother. Back with Snow, he grips the crystal tear Sarah left him and remembers how he was the one who let Sarah get captured by the ffxiii. And over by Zsasz and Vanille, their runaway journey takes them to the Sunleth waterscape, where in the giant forest they see more PSICOM moving towards Palampolum, and choose to run in the other direction towards the city of Nautilus. As they travel, Zsasz talks about his son Dodge, and how when they went to visit a Sanctum ffxiii, his son was suddenly taken by the ffxiii as it was attacked by two invaders from Pulse. In self-defense, it had grabbed Dodge and made him a l'Cie and granted him the rare ability to sense Pulse l'Cie. At once, the Sanctum government officials claimed his son in anti-pulse efforts, and the reason Zsasz himself snuck aboard the train earlier was because he figured Dodge's focus might be to destroy the Pulse ffxiii. Afterwards, Vanille realizes it was her and Fang that accidentally set that course of events in motion. Over by Hope and Lightning, they reach Palimpolim and slip by the occupation of the city thanks to Hope's knowledge of the area. They pass by Carbuncle, a ffxiii that creates food for the city, and it suddenly hits them that this ffxiii, like others, do nothing but nurture, warm, and care for the people of Cocoon, despite being sentient themselves. In an epiphany, they realize that ffxiii just consider humans as mere pets, and Eden isn't strictly the enemy. However, as they step out, they realize the Psychom were one step ahead of them this whole time and they are hopelessly surrounded. Suddenly, Snow and Fang barge in, dispel the ambush, and rescue them both. Lightning hands Hope over to Snow to protect him and works with Fang to carve out an escape route. Snow cleans up the troops and explains that he and Fang were taken in by Sid and his division of troops called the Cavalry, who are in a military coup against the theocracy of Sanctum's government. Left in the care of the one person he despises to the point of murder, Hope and Snow escape, as do Fang and Lightning. After agreeing to rendezvous at Hope's father's house, Fang reveals to Lightning that she and Vanille are originally from Pulse, or once l'Cie that became crystals, and came out of that, proving that there's still hope for Sarah as well. Meanwhile, Snow continues to rescue civilians rounded up by the military and stir up chaos to confuse them, though the civilians aren't very grateful, so he's forced to scare them away with a show of magic. Later, as they escape, Hope confronts Snow to take responsibility for all those whom have died as he moves towards him to kill him. Suddenly, a blast from pursuing soldiers throws him off, and Snow decides to save him despite the confrontation. Over with Fang and Lightning, Fang reveals more of her backstory of how her own and Vanille's efforts on Cocoon got Sarah turned into a l'Cie by accident as well, and though Lightning understandably lashes out for that, the fact that she can turn back is some good news at least. Carrying Hope away from danger, a wounded Snow admits to himself and Hope that he's guilty for Hope's mom's death, and learns to stop hiding behind bravado to hide failure. Hope then admits killing Snow won't bring her back, and learns to stop letting revenge be his only motivating drive. After defending against pursuing Machine, Fang and Lightning catch up, and Hope greets his father with the dismal news of his mother's death, though the father is at least glad to see his son again. As Snow heals up, Lightning apologizes to him for doubting him when he believed the most, and Snow later apologizes to the father for his wife's death. They talk about their next move, as even though the Sanctum is a puppet under the ffxiii, they can't just topple the government, as it will throw all of Cocoon into turmoil. However, Psychom quickly catches up to them and has a firing squad ready. Snow makes a plea to stop, but the commander of Psychom himself, Yag Roche, steps in to explain that if they don't kill the l'Cie and continue the purge, then there's no way to control the public fear. Suddenly, members of Sid's cavalry step in to save them and take them away. Seeing the events unfold from Nautilus, Zsasz and Vanille try to keep avoiding the problem by attending the festivities. They watch a fancy parade recount Sanctum's version of how the War of Transgression took place, and then visit a chocobo park, where he explains the chocobo chick he carries around was actually a gift for his son. With a heavy sigh, he tells Vanille that he's done running away, and wants to turn himself in now. Even though they'll likely kill him, he hopes they'll honor his last request to see his son, whom they are keeping anyway. Vanille is shocked and urges him to stay alive, at least for the sake of getting revenge on the person who got his son turned into a l'Cie. She's about to confess the secret that she's the one behind it, but Psychom catches up to them and opens fire. Fighting back, he's shocked to suddenly come across his son Dodge, though he is as overjoyed as he is surprised. Dodge suddenly crystallizes over, as apparently finding his father as a l'Cie was his focus goal. Colonel Jill comes out to explain that they've been using his son to search out hiding l'Cie all this time, and shows proof that the two Pulse l'Cie that caused Dodge to become branded in the first place were Fang and Vanille. Giving Zsasz the chance to exact revenge for his son, Jill lets him chase after Vanille to kill her, and he runs off. Now tired of running away herself, Vanille faces her own guilt and is prepared to die, but Zsasz doesn't feel killing her would change anything. Suddenly, an Eidolon erupts from Zsasz, and after taming it, gains the Autobot Brynhildr. With fear no longer their driving motivations, Vanille and Zsasz decide finally that enough is enough and there will be no more running. Being taken to the Palamecia, Sanctum's flagship, their capture is made known publicly, and so the rest of the group moves in to rescue them, especially hearing how Primarch Daisley will be there personally. Though they figure it's a trap for all of them, they figure they should try to turn the tables and capture the Primarch and have him confess the ffxiii's schemes. During their containment, Zsasz asks Vanille about waking up from her crystal state, as it gives hope to Dodge's condition too. She explains that they were made l'Cie hundreds of years ago to fight in the War of Transgression, and after fulfilling their focus, were in a long crystal sleep. They were waken up without giving much reason why, and though Fang has lost her memory, Vanille chose to play dumb in hopes of running away from any responsibility as a lessee. They jump the guards to their cell and escape, eventually reuniting with their would-be rescuers. The two Pulse natives capture an aerial enemy and plan to use it to travel, and again, a strange owl observes the group at a distance. They then use their new ride to crash directly into the bridge. Storming the throne of the Primarch, Colonel Jill stands between them, though she is killed by a blast of magic from the supposedly human Daisley. He proceeds to kill everyone else in the room except for them, dismissing them as mere tools. He reveals to them that the floating continent of Cocoon is nothing more than a ffxiii factory for the mass production of humans to be used as thralls for the ffxiii. Based on his magic usage, they accuse him of being a lessee as well, but he laughingly corrects them and reveals his true form as the ffxiii Barthandelus, shepherd to the human cattle of Cocoon. They fight, though Barthandelus stops, informing them this skirmish is useless. He explains their focus of Ragnarok is the only thing that can kill a ffxiii definitely, of which one of them will eventually turn into the beast and do so. He insists their focus is to kill Orphan, who's another ffxiii. Put in context, he is the ffxiii that oversees Cocoon, Eden is the ffxiii that nurtures it, and Orphan is the ffxiii that powers everything like a giant battery. They counter that by saying destroying Orphan is paramount to destroying Cocoon, and Sarah's focus was to tell them to protect Cocoon, which they plan to do. Daisley then counters, reminding them that Sarah's focus was likely just bringing them all together and anything she said was meaningless. He offers to prove being right about this and their focus, and then summons his owl familiar, which turns into an airship for them to use. The ship then helps them escape a pursuing Commander Roche and lands them somewhere underground. With time to think, the group questions not only why Daisley revealed all that he did so easily, but also why he, a Cocoon ffxiii, would want to destroy Cocoon. Looking around, they find this to be an ancient pulse architecture right underneath the capital of Cocoon for some reason, and investigate to figure out what Daisley wanted them to see. They discover this underground area is actually an ancient pulse facility called an Ark, which Vanille explains were massive armories set up all around the world to house living weapons and also be a training ground for lessee soldiers. The one therein is only the fifth of an unknown number of them. As they take advantage of the opportunity to master their lessee powers, they are surprised to find cavalry leader Sid down here as well. He explains he too is a lessee, and his focus was to help lead them to Daisley, which he did, though hasn't crystallized yet for some reason. He explains Daisley has been observing and watching out for them this whole time to ensure they are pushed along his set path that will lead to Cocoon's destruction. The grand purpose of it all is to restore the entity known as the Maker, a greater being that created both humans and ffxiii and then promptly left. In its absence, humans began to grow restless and wage war among themselves, and the ffxiii wanted to restore peace. This is why they make lessee, and also why they want to call back the Maker to return and restore order. In order to do so, they need a massive sacrifice, and destroying Cocoon will not only end the useless humans, but also serve as a tribute to recall the Maker, which can then restore a new, better world. Asking why the ffxiii can't just end Cocoon themselves and task them to do it for them, Sid replies it's because by their very design, ffxiii are incapable of unharming each other, or Cocoon which they are bound to by existence, and thus must create lessee soldiers to do so. Sid curses his contradictory situation, as when he was a human he wanted to protect Cocoon with his life, but when made a lessee his life now depends on destroying it. Despite that turmoil, he felt inspired by the group's fighting and now chooses to reject his own focus, though doing so means destroying Ragnarok's candidates. This decision spurs the start of a Seath transformation and he attacks the party. The group wins and suddenly Sid crystallizes over and disappears. That's unlike any other crystallizations they've seen so far. Still, they too are inspired by Sid's courage to defy his supposed destiny and fight the way his heart demanded. However, they're not unanimous on this, as Fang has no love for Cocoon and doesn't want her or Vanille to turn Seath for defying their focus. Suddenly, the Eidolon Bahamut erupts out, and Fang explains Eidolons exist as retainers to either refocus indecisive lessee or kill them before they turn Seath. Learning that being lessee doesn't prevent you from doing what's right, Fang gains the aid of the jet-transforming Bahamut. Seeing how Fang's brand is scarred and Sid accomplished the new crystallization process by fulfilling his human desires over his focus, the party wonders if there is a way to lose their brands, and makes that their next search. Further in, they find an active airship and portal to Grand Pulse, and make the bold leap to visit the world below. They make it through the portal, and though their ship is damaged by the local wildlife, they make it down safely. The world of Grand Pulse is wild and untamed, with only ruins left of the human civilizations that used to live there before the war. No longer constricted to the hallways of Cocoon, the game now opens up to multiple sprawling environments and expanded player freedom. As they survive on Pulse, Hope's brand begins to mature to dangerous levels that makes his transformation to Seath a matter of time now. Desiring to be left behind before he turns into a monster, the Eidolon Alexander comes out, which essentially proves there's still hope for Hope. With renewed confidence, he gains the aid of his transformation into a fortress, and they make tracks to the one last place to check, Vanille and Fang's hometown of Erba. Along the way, they find a Seath Stone, a state of transformation for a failed l'Cie that still has a chance to be saved provided someone else can complete their focus for them. Helping out as many as they can, they eventually progress to the underground roads of the Mahabara Subterra and hitch a ride on a friendly burrowing fal'Cie. Exiting, Fang reveals she never really lost her memory and remembers why her brand is scarred and Grand Pulse is as ruined as it is, and that's because she was the last Ragnarok. However, Vanille doesn't want to admit that for her friend's sake, and suddenly the 100-armed Eidolon Hecatoncheir comes out to force her to stop playing games and twisting the truth. Ready to face reality like a grown-up, she gains the aid of its mobile gun turret transformation. Afterwards, she then apologizes to Snow for hiding all this time that she not only met Sarah earlier, but because she was running away from her focus was why Sarah got made into a l'Cie at all. Though, Snow isn't angry and says to apologize to Sarah herself once they rescue her from a crystal state. Navigating through the Tower of Taejin, they ward off a hostile fal'Cie with the help of the Tower's guardians and manage to score their first victory against a fal'Cie, proving they can be killed apart from Ragnarok. Reaching Erba now, Fang and Vanille are dismayed to find their lush village home is now nothing more than a ruined desert town, populated only by Seath monsters. Suddenly, they find Sarah in the village, telling them to continue their mission to save Cocoon by means of destroying it and rebuilding, even calling Lightning out by her real name, Claire. Figuring it's not really her, the illusion is dropped and it turns out it's Daisley only messing with them to prove his point. He mocks the dead end of their search to remove their l'Cie brands, and reminds them that he plans on starting a civil war in Cocoon, starting with his resignation as leader and appointing a restored Cid as its new head. Knowing his cavalry resistance won't like that, all he has to do is point to Orphan as the cause of his new switch, and the rioting will direct the cavalry to kill Orphan, assuming the fear of losing Orphan doesn't spur the citizens to war among themselves first. He indulges a small fight with them and then invites them to witness the unsavable society themselves firsthand, and challenges them to try to save Cocoon without resorting to Ragnarok. He provides transport back to Cocoon, but before leaving, they read a record in Erba that explains Fang as Ragnarok was prevented from finishing her mission in the war due to a fal'Cie draining her power as the Beast. She and Vanille were put to sleep until the next opportunity to become Ragnarok came along, and in the meanwhile, Barthandelus stole them and watched over them on Cocoon. Understanding this, they learn that even if they save Cocoon by helping Orphan, people in fal'Cie will still continue to fight, and another attempt on Orphan will be made later, as Barthandelus had said. Deciding now to begin their own revolution and try to force people to stop fighting meaningless fights, they choose to head back. As the new head of state, Sid gives his public address, during which the group crashes in, just before Barthandelus opens the Ark beneath Cocoon to let the stored beasts of Pulse run wild and cause public pandemonium. As predicted, the cavalry confronts Sid, grants his request for release by death, and the military is imploding on itself. Moving to Eden, the group dashes for Orphan to protect it before the cavalry moves to destroy it per Barthandelus' plan. They are slowed by PSICOM leader Roche, who figures it's the group causing the invasion and makes every effort to end them before being forced to fall back. Making their way across the battle-torn streets, they even run across the civilian-minded renegade Nora, still on Snow's side, even if l'Cie. Making their way to Eden, wherein lies Orphan, the battery behind Eden, they find and defeat Roche again, and learn that he knew the fal'Cie were controlling everything all along, but admits his faith in them was misplaced. Before he falls, he makes amends and commands the PSICOM to stop fighting and start evacuating the citizens of Cocoon, and afterwards disbands the military branch. However, as they enter Cradle, the area leading to Orphan, they find the cavalry turned to Seath already. It was again bait by Barthandelus to lead them there, crush their hope, and force one of them to despair enough to turn to the Ragnarok. Even as they make it to Orphan, Barthandelus is there to agonize them by shattering Dodge and Sarah before their eyes, but both Sarah's tear and the Chocobo chick verify it's just more illusions to mess with their heads. He spurs them to end Cocoon's suffering quickly, but they defiantly state that they are only there for Barthandelus. They clash with the genocidal puppet master, and as the fal'Cie finally falls, it's still not over, as he combines with Orphan to try to force Vanille to turn into Ragnarok. However, Fang volunteers to change and become the monster instead. Unfortunately, her transformation fails, and everyone but Vanille and her changed into Seath. In a rage over this, she finally succeeds in morphing into the beast and proceeds to tear into Orphan. However, again, the transformation falls before she finishes, and Vanille stands up now to defy Orphan yet again. This time, the others reappear miraculously from their seethed form, and the group is reunited again, claiming that if they have the power to destroy Cocoon, then they also have the power to save it. Defeating him, and now the actual form of Orphan, the power across Cocoon shuts off immediately, proof that Orphan is no more. As Final Fantasy XIII concludes, Cocoon starts to fall to its destruction, and the group tries to stick together. However, the last two natives of Pulse from another time era split off from the group, transform into a giant fused Ragnarok, and use its mighty power to call forth the elements to rise up in a pillar to support Cocoon. Succeeding in their mutual focus to produce Ragnarok, they crystallize and form a solid pillar between the two worlds, saving the human race. Beyond, the rest of the group has already crystallized, having succeeded in their focus, but are inexplicably returned to life again, with their brands gone. As the citizens of Cocoon now face a new life on the new world they once feared, they see Dodge and Sarah are among those that were also restored from a crystal sleep. The game ends on the dawn of a new day for the future of the human race, as Final Fantasy XIII has enjoyed the success of selling over 7 million copies worldwide.